Thank you both for coming on. I guess the easiest point to start, give me a little bit of an intro on yourselves, what you do, all that good stuff. We'll start with Aaron.
Excellent. So thanks. I've been around in Newcastle for longer than I probably care to say. So been involved in technology. Well, I finished uni kind of early 2000s and have pretty much been doing startups ever since. So first thing that I kind of started doing was mobile gaming. So pretty much straight out of uni. Won a kind of Vodafone Global Games Challenge in 2003. And thought, hey, this is a hell of a thing to start doing. So got a group of friends together, kind of started doing that. And then have really tried to avoid going to Sydney over the course of the last 20 years. So yeah, the trick has always been trying to earn a Sydney wage in Newcastle, which is a life goal, shall we say. But yeah, have seen lots of people go down that path and just really keen to stay here and local. So yeah, have been working through, then evolved into kind of mobile mapping because after phones got connectivity, all of a sudden games weren't really the best thing you could be doing with them. Then kind of a brief bit into social networking with McCokey and then some local search with 13Find. And then around kind of, 2015 really met Nick Smith from Airside and we basically said, hey, let's get a LiDAR sensor and how hard could it be to put a scanner together? And that's kind of where the kind of current iteration of Cordel has really evolved from.
Awesome.
But Witold.
I have much more colorful career and all over the place. I'm a wood scientist from Poland that somehow ended up in Newcastle just pre-pandemic. I've worked in construction. I run my own business. At some point, I made a switch to IT and I ended up working for a medical journaling company in Sweden. But the dark and the cold drove me out and I came to visit Newcastle where I have some family and I absolutely fell in love, decided to move and a few months later, I ended up here.
I love that you still use the term wood scientist. What's the Australian term for wood scientist?
Probably a chippy.
It's great though, because Witold's actually done, like after the pandemic when we're moving back into the offices, we were kind of looking at desks and rearranging everything and Witold got some very plain bits of wood and it's all come up looking, very custom, very good for, it's a nice setup that we've got now. So
thank you. Yeah, some carpentry skills come in handy when we need to redecorate office and things like that.
Yes, it's good to have a diversity of skills because we don't have things like a diversity of names in our company. On the development team, we have Josh, Jordan, John. So yeah, probably not our strongest suite. And on the Airside side, we have
Jared.
Jared is our surveyor, and we're just putting on a new surveyor, also Jared.
Excellent. Excellent. I guess your positions within the company, what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm Chief Technical Officer, and that is a fairly wide-ranging role at our company. So, and that's everything from, working with the hardware team to, we've got our own scanning hardware, right through to, the automated analysis and then working with Witold on the AI team to actually drive, a lot of the insights that people need from that kind of data. So,
yeah, and I am AI project manager. This is very wide role as well. I do a lot of AI training, understanding of the data and the requirements of the customers, a lot of technical understanding what it is that we're actually trying to solve and what could we possibly solve with the technology we have.
Cool. And sometimes you build desks.
And sometimes I build desks.
Yeah. Excellent.
It's more of a hobby almost, but
you give him a job, he'll do it. Yeah. I guess broadly speaking, what is Cordel? What is the company? What is the aim?
That is an excellent question. So we're kind of born, and I think I just briefly touched on, 2015, we got a LiDAR sensor and we're like, this would be cool to kind of make a scanner and get it out there. So Nick Smith at the time was actually CEO of Airside. And we kind of joined forces to start, we initially wanted to build a LiDAR scanner for drones. And that's something that we actually have now. It's called NextCore. It's a product that we sell. But through doing that, this was fairly early on in the piece, around 2016, we actually had Sydney Trains come to us and say, well, we actually want to do a drone LiDAR scan, on this, fairly big section of the Sydney Trains network. But there's just a slight problem with that. It was all at the base of Sir Kingsford Smith Airport, which you might know it. It's a small international job. Yeah. So there's basically no chance of ever flying a drone at the base of
that's like a 5K exclusion zone that you just can't fly anything.
Yeah. So that was pretty much out because that was kind of most of their network. So we're like, well, what if we took this scanning rig that we're designing for drones and just put it on a high rail or a train? And then because we've been coming from the drone space where weight is like such a key concern, like every few hundred grams you add, you're cutting 5-10 minutes off your flight time. Like, this is great. We can throw all the sensors on here. We'll do cameras. We'll do, a better GPS. And so that was kind of the concept for, the Cordel side of things, where we're doing a lot of the train-based scanners. And Cordel's been kind of through a few iterations. So initially it was Corridor Insights, then it was Smart Corridor, and then it was just Corridor, and now it's Cordel. So trademarking, especially in the US, is a wonderful process that I pity anyone who actually has to go through it. But that's the reason why it's been through so many refinements and things like that. But yeah, so now a lot of our work is actually, we do build and sell the next core drone scanners, and we have the same development team works across them, and that shares a lot of technology with the train-based scanners that we've actually got out there. But a lot of the work that we're doing now is on the train-based scanners, and it's effectively a mobile laser scanner, which is not really a new area, but what's new in what we're doing is it's relatively low cost. So we're taking the LiDAR scanners that are coming out of autonomous driving, and they're kind of an order of magnitude cheaper than a lot of the kind of conventional kind of survey grade LiDARs that have been around for a bit longer. So we can use those. They're weatherproof. They can be permanently mounted, that kind of thing, because autonomous driving is, it's effectively an always-on type scanner. They've been designed for that kind of use case. So we're trying to get, that cost of capture of all that data down by an order of magnitude.
Sure.
And reasonably successfully too, which then creates the next thing, which is a data problem. And a lot of networks already have this because they're getting LiDAR scans done and they get, effectively a point cloud at the end of it, which you can make measurements in, and that's well and good. But then you actually need an engineer to sit down and make all the measurements that you need, and it can actually be just as time consuming as going out and manually doing it. So it's that's where we're kind of starting to add a lot of value into there. So.
Sure.
Yeah, one thing we're also focusing on, as opposed to specialized scanning, when you need a specialized rig that just goes very slowly and the rail or whatever piece of track needs to be blocked off, we're focusing on having our equipment on trains that are in service or specialized trains that travel the network anyway.
Yeah.
And so here in Australia, we're working with ARTC. So they manage a good chunk of railway here in Australia, especially here in New South Wales. Yeah. And they've actually got a track geometry cart, the AK cart, that travels all around Australia. And their primary mission really is measuring the track geometry, so where any defects in the rails and things like that. So, but we're actually got our sensor suite on there as well.
Cool.
And we're effectively just along for the ride. So we've got the whole thing set up. It's automated. It's just capturing whenever it's moving. And we've got 4G telemetry in, so we can see up on our dev room wall, we can see, health indicators. Green is good, red's bad.
Yep.
Don't see much red, thankfully, but yeah, so we can monitor it pretty much anywhere where there's a phone signal. And
cool.
And it's actually a bit of a testament to some of our mobile phone networks because it stretches a lot further than I would have thought. It goes to some pretty remote areas. So
to put that in scale, we scanned about about 60,000 kilometers, something like 40,000 kilometers last year, which is about circumference of Earth, I think.
Yeah.
So,
it's
yeah.
approximately that. So yeah, about 60,000 Ks a year
Wow.
we're kind of doing just on that one scanner.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
But yeah, as I said, that creates a big data problem.
Yes.
Yeah, so you solve one problem, the making it cheap to capture, and then you've effectively created an even worse data problem than you had.
Yeah.
before, so.
Yeah. What is the tech stack of Cordel? I imagine there's going to be a lot of effort required in basically storing and making that data useful. I imagine there's a lot of effort required in physically just developing visualizations, dashboarding, that sort of thing. I guess the perfect hire for Cordel. What skills do they have?
Yeah, and this is something that it varies obviously by piece that we're working on, but we do use .NET fairly extensively because, like, starting at the hardware level, we have effectively a rover that's doing all the data logging for the mobile laser scanning. So it's like pulling the LiDAR information in. It's then timestamping the camera feed to the GPS, the same as the LiDAR, keeping the GPS and, kind of really collating all that data. So that's all done in .NET. We actually have like a Linux environment on a single board computer. And it used to be mono, but now we can run .NET Core, even better. So we run that kind of at the coalface, essentially, like as we're capturing. And then we have, normally something watching that there that is effectively just a GUI that's on a screen somewhere so the operators can actually see. Whether or not they actually look at it is another thing.
But it's there.
Yeah. So, and then we pipe telemetry up to our web service, and we're using .NET on the website as well. So we're kind of using MVC.NET and I'm not big on the website of things, but we're bringing in a bunch of new JavaScript frameworks and bits and pieces. So then on the website, we've got, quite a lot of technology going on there because all this data, we've got to store it somewhere. So we're putting it into S3 containers in AWS or Azure storage blobs. Okay. And so, that cloud backend and infrastructure is kind of a fairly key component for us.
Absolutely.
But the .NET side, that's where we're accessing it and that kind of thing. But there is also, after that data has been uploaded, you need to be able to view it. And this is, something that we've found is a big problem for a lot of our clients is, we got a LiDAR scan done. It's on, John's desk. If you need it, go tap him on the shoulder and put the drive in your machine and then open up an engineering piece of software to get the bit of data. Whereas we want to make it all kind of web accessible so that, and so we have a lot that goes into the visualization of that data so that, effectively they can click on a map and go, hey, something happened on this area of track. They can review the video footage, look at the LiDAR point cloud, any of the automated analytics for, that stretch. And so on that side, there's kind of a lot of front end work too. So viewing the point tree, the point cloud, we use Potree, and there's a lot of JavaScript to, run, just to run basically the web app really well on the client side. But then on the server side, there's automated processing frameworks that we have to do, and we have, about 12 stages that data's going through. So there's a lot of kind of heavy lifting with .NET and utilizing a lot of kind of the 3D side of things on the back end. So in that area, the math becomes a lot more intense, and we've got we have some people with point cloud experience and also some ex-gaming guys as well, because it turns out a lot of the 3D math translates very well from, the gaming space into. So that's kind of, a lot of .NET there, but it's used in very different ways on, things like the rover, going around the website and the back end. After we've kind of one of the steps in our automated pipeline, we actually do like a lot of AI analytics on it. And that's where kind of Witold and the AI team basically get sent a bunch of data. And this is a fairly loosely coupled system. And we use a a slightly different technology stack on that side.
Yeah, we use MXNet and Python on the backend for machine learning, and we manage all our jobs and models through a web app we built, and that runs on Meteor, which is a framework based on Node and React combined with that. That's fairly simple. And then we communicate with the rest of Aaron's system through an API.
Cool.
So we have our system Dockerized and ready to, we run it locally on our local machines, but if we need to deploy it at scale, we have everything Dockerized, so ready to scale up to Azure if we need to, or AWS.
Yeah, which is always interesting. A lot of those instances of some of them are more expensive than employees, but that's but it's worked really well having that slightly different stack for kind of everything, and then the AI is really kind of its own beast. Especially, there are many challenges in making a production system using Python, I'll say, but it is also the best language to be doing a lot of AI and machine learning in, because anytime a new paper comes out, they're not using C#, they're not using .NET. It's Python is the example, and if you want any hope of even replicating what they've done, then it really needs to be.
We're looking to slowly migrate into Julia, but that's a long-term project, so yeah.
Yeah, and that's worked, reasonably well for us this far. So, and it is nice having the two systems fairly loosely coupled with just a RESTful API between them.
Yeah,
it's worked very well.
Excellent. Anything in particular that I guess is publicly facing that you're super proud of? Anything that people can look at to get a better understanding as to what I guess the end product is?
Yeah, that's a bit of a challenging one, because a lot of the time we're working with railways who don't like to share a lot of their actual raw data. But on our website, we have some examples that we can share, and we go through a bit of it. Also on the NextCore side of things, with the drone-based LiDAR scanner, that's got a lot more marketing spiel around it, and because that's been out there for 3 years now, there's a lot of people using it for weird and wonderful things as well. So it is interesting creating this, and because it's so applicable to a lot of different areas, you are seeing a lot of surveyors use it, which you kind of expect. It's like you are shooting lasers from drones, but at the end of the day, it's just like a more advanced measuring tape. So so you'd kind of expect that use case, but there's a lot of people in environmental monitoring. We have spoken to New South Wales Fire. They're interested in fuel loads, and
that's cool.
We work with environmental monitoring with the
Darwin, the Witold project.
Yeah, and they're very interested in. They have a few super sites where they're basically trying to determine how much carbon's being sunk into those areas.
Sure.
And it's very interesting up there because it's tropical. It burns out, roughly every year. They're trying to figure out how much actually stays there. And a very dynamic environment too, because everything just grows so quickly. So they're interested in seeing, how big a tree trunks, what other information they can get from it too. So, that's great. And we've actually seen, some people doing their PhDs on the back of the kind of data that they're capturing.
Awesome.
But on the Cordel side, the automated analytics that we're doing is fairly class leading. So, and it can be as simple as just, measuring what's around the train. So, obviously trees are a big one. ARTC have a very big network. A lot of areas is fairly low value network. So, obviously vegetation management costs a lot. Trees grow all the time. So being able to make accurate measurements and not just knowing, that there's something that's a problem now, but there's something that could be a problem in, 3 to 6 months, and, doing a lot of that triage so that they can effectively send the, teams out there to do it more effectively. So,
excellent.
But we're currently doing, in about a month's time, we'll have hardware in the UK as well as the US doing, scanning, and
cool.
That's kind of great to, go to bed and you're watching, someone out in the US doing scanning, and then you wake up and, there's someone in the UK about to go. It's very interesting seeing all that happen.
And it must really sort of validate the what you've built essentially, that it has, I guess, taken root outside of just Australia.
Yeah, and it's one of these things that, you just need to get off the island kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, we, post-pandemic world, it's a pretty big bubble now, but it's very interesting working with, someone like ARTC and going, well, that's a good chunk of Australia's railway network. But and we have looked at even things like roads in the past with the AI, and we've got some very good results from them. But there's just enough differences in roads because, they're not all federally kind of run.
Yes.
You then fall down to New South Wales has like its chunk, and then this larger roads, and then you've got councils picking out their little bits, and they all do their signage differently. And there's enough differences that it's hard to scale. But railways, I mean, the Industrial Revolution happened a little while ago now, so
Yes.
some of the processes probably date back that far. So it's probably right for bringing some technology in.
Yeah.
But a railway, the construction techniques are pretty much the same the world around. So it's been really good for us to see that, well, in the UK and Japan and the US, it's effectively the same thing. Like they look, and especially when you're using the LiDAR and looking at point clouds, it's very hard to tell the difference between, this is in the UK or this is in the US or this is in Australia. They all look fairly similar in that. Once you start looking at the video footage, of course, everyone will have a different stance. We like our signs to be this size and have reflectors around here, and there's some differences there. But yeah,
funnily enough, Aaron, since I stare a lot of those images from point clouds, you can tell by vegetation most easily which railways you're looking at. Vegetation in the UK looks very different than vegetation in Australia.
Absolutely.
And even across the continent, it looks different here and looks different up north.
Yeah.
So that's an easier telltale than actual technology.
Yeah, we'll become botanists yet.
Let's take a pretty hard pivot. Yeah, those are always fun. Cordel, you've got presences globally really now, but from what I can tell, the bulk of your engineering talent, the bulk of that expertise exists within Newcastle. Obviously, you've been in Newcastle since day dot, essentially. Why Newcastle? And I guess the sub question, why haven't you moved elsewhere?
Yeah. Oh, well, I think you don't really need to explain to people from Newcastle why to stay in Newcastle. And it is funny. I was mentioning that I didn't want to go to Sydney, but have had lots of, colleagues and friends who've all made the migration to Sydney or even globally. But it is interesting because once they start having kids, they're like, you know what? Newcastle's a pretty good place to be, like always being 10 minutes-ish from the beach. And, we do complain about our traffic, but like then you take a trip to Sydney, you're like, nah, we don't have traffic. It's fine.
Newcastle's great if you don't have kids as well.
Oh,
Just saying. You don't have to have kids to appreciate Newcastle.
But it is a key driver for bringing a lot of people back as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people who, like to go out, and, I'm of an age where a lot of friends have actually come back and Sydney real estate prices are a thing, very real thing that will direct people back to Newcastle.
Yeah.
But look, we love the location. It is actually really good for us because, the Hunter Valley is actually, being in the rail industry as well. There's actually a pretty big operation here because obviously it's fairly profitable for them to haul coal up and down the Hunter Valley. So, we've got a big presence here, but we're also kind of rural enough that it's easier for us to work with, someone like the ARTC. We've got access to Broadmeadow to actually, work on trains and things like that. So, Newcastle just ticks a lot of boxes for us. And, since we started here, it makes a lot of sense to keep going here as well. In terms of global operations, I mean, we've started with mostly kind of sales and account managers overseas, but we still drive all the engineering here locally. That will probably change as we need to put on more technical people in the right time zones, because it's not always fun getting up in the morning and then late at night and then dealing with all those bits and pieces. But we envisage, basically doing a lot of the development work here in Newcastle.
Awesome.
Because we've got a good team. We found that it's actually been a reasonably good talent pool. And we haven't had a huge amount of trouble growing, although arguably we'll probably grow out of our current premises, which is always a good problem to have, but a problem nonetheless. So,
yes.
Yeah, look, we're just reasonably happy with running everything here, and probably a little bit biased because we've been here so long, but there's absolutely no reason to move.
No. I'm new to Newcastle, and I'm absolutely agreeing with you here. So,
you've just hammed on about how good Newcastle is. What about Newcastle isn't good for Cordel? Is there anything that, theoretically being in Sydney would make things easier? Is there anything that theoretically being not in Australia even would make things easier?
Yeah, and it's a challenging thing because, time zones are an issue. So no matter where you are, there's going to be, a good chunk of the world that's not in your time zone. So, this is a little bit problematic for us, and especially because we decided to go US and UK.
Yes.
They're very not ideal choices. Moving to Sydney is not really going to fix that, but it will mean that obviously Japan, a lot of Asia, all that is in our time zone. So we've got that in our favor. So that's not really a here nor there type thing. Probably 15 years ago, I would have said there's just more technology stuff happening in Sydney. There's, better ecosystems, more people to talk to, but that's coming to Newcastle, and that's been really encouraging to see, that the whole sector kind of blossom a lot more. There's more events, there's more kind of cross-pollination between the tech companies, and just the fact there's more tech companies too. So there's, more things to talk about. I think I relayed a story previously of, 15 years ago, we were talking to Oz Industry or one of the kind of government things, and they were basically like, okay, you're in the Hunter Valley. What can you do to make more wine production or rip more coal out of the ground? I'm like, yeah, it's not really what we do. We can't really help you on that. But, we're exporting games to, 25 different countries, and, all that's export dollars. Oh, yeah, that's cute. Don't want to know about it kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more going on, and there's a lot more understanding of, technology and the benefits that it can bring. So, yeah, look, I don't think that that's really a big driver to go to Sydney these days, but there is also just, a lot more people in Sydney. So there is arguably, more talent, more people.
More diversity. That's something I would add here. Since we're talking about more people, that's like when hiring, I really struggle to find candidates that are not like us here. We're three white guys sitting at the table, two of us bearded. So,
yeah, and as we mentioned, we have problem with diversity of names at our company, let alone a lot of the other things. So, yeah, it would be nice to just have more people, but that's a double-edged sword as well. So, and I think that reasons I mentioned earlier, Newcastle's dragging a lot of people back here as well. So, I went to University of Newcastle. There's a lot of people who have, and then pretty much jet straight back.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who are like, actually, it wasn't so bad there. So, so we found it's worked pretty well. In terms of, other countries, the UK, setting up an office in London. So, you did mention kind of Maestrano. So because we technically got acquired in late 2019 by them. They used to be a fintech company, so they had they were founded here initially in Sydney, and that's where head office was. But they did also have an office in the UK and in the US as well. So we know what it takes to run an office in multiple places, and some of those places are very expensive to be running an office and having teams locally and things like that. So the costs that are associated with that make Newcastle look fairly attractive as well. I think I've just turned you like, why not Newcastle into more pro Newcastle? But very biased.
You've really thrown a judo move on me there. Yeah,
hard pivot.
No, I mean, the answer essentially boils down to Newcastle's the best. There's no bad reason, so we'll run with that.
Yeah, I mean, it is a smaller place and everything that happens with that. If we were selling a lot locally, we'd be missing out on a lot of the economies of scale and things like that. That just being in Sydney, there's more people, there's more of a local market. Because we're dealing with, railways, there's only so many railways, and especially in any given area, you can't really have 10 railways competing for your dollar. So, they are just geographically spread out. So servicing them from Newcastle is not that bigger. But that said, access to capital and a lot of other things, I would argue that Sydney's probably not even that good for those. But, unless you want to pick up and go to Silicon Valley, which there's even a lot of people like shifting out of that kind of area now, that's one thing that Australia in general doesn't have, is that kind of venture capital going around that a lot of other areas do. So that's probably a fairly big drawback in staying in Newcastle, but
is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Another hard pivot. Let's go again. As far as education is concerned, did you do the tertiary education route? Did you do self-guided, self-paced stuff? I guess, where did you build the skill set?
Well, I'm very much not a wood scientist, so for better or worse. But I actually went to Newcastle Uni, so I did joint comp sci and math. So have enough of a background to be dangerous in the field that we're in. So yeah, look, and that's, a nice thing about Newcastle is we've got the uni right here. It actually draws in, a lot of people from the region. And yeah, look, I think that about when I finished my uni degree, I probably didn't have a very high opinion of it. And I started working for myself straight after it. So I've actually never had to show my degree or results to any potential employers.
Yep.
But I think it gives you a good theoretical grounding. Like a lot of the, again, I might be biased here, but a lot of the math kind of features, languages come and go, techniques, packages, all that comes and goes. But a lot of the theory has, it had already been around for 40 years when I did uni, and hasn't changed in the 20 years since. So that kind of grounding. And as the computers and frameworks are doing a lot more for you, it actually becomes more important because, you can have one line of code and it's like, you realize this is iterating over a list with 1 million things in it, like 3 different times in order to give you one value at the end. And an appreciation for that kind of comes with that degree. So on our tech team, I think at least on the programmer side, pretty much everyone has, a comp sci or software engineering, or actually we have a few who've actually done electrical engineering, and then
you've got a fair few
Mac
guys in as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the hardware team and on our filter team as well, mechatronics, as well as actually mechanical engineering as well. We love the mechatronics because it's a good combination of hardware and software, and it's great to have those kind of people on the team as well, because they bring in like a different perspective. They've done a lot more of the robotics side of things, and especially on the hardware side, it's good to have that depth there. But it is always interesting because then you get them starting to do software for one piece, and then we assimilate it into the software team pretty quickly and go, so you see where you did this, maybe we should do it this way. And but it's good because there's a lot of kind of cross-pollination then between those ones. So do you add anything on the uni side?
No, I don't think I have much to add on the Newcastle uni side. I have very little experience with it. My degree is highly irrelevant to anything pretty much, but I've gained a lot of life experience through running my own construction business, working in production and managing workflows, things like that. So
Well, you started at Cordel or Airsight as a junior dev. So how did you pick up that skill set?
Being roughly the same age as Aaron here, like this kind of grew up around me, or I became interested as internet became a thing. I remember like looking at the first websites in Notepad and trying to build things like that, and this kind of stayed with me. Like I did a bit of freelancing here and there, and at some point I realized, hey, this construction thing is super stressful and there's a lot to running your own business other than doing the actual work. So, and there was a shortage of front-end developers in Stockholm where I lived at the time. So, maybe I should do something where I will work a bit less and I will earn a bit more and I'll be a bit less stressed. So yeah, I did a bit of study on my own time. And
how's that less stress thing working out?
very well.
And, further to Witold's story there is, the formal education is one thing, but it's also, and, what we look for in a lot of candidates too is just, their passion for the craft. And like, if someone comes in, got a degree, it's like, okay, and, in all they've got is work experience, it's like, okay, that's kind of a thing. But if someone's like, oh, I've done this, I've been in the industry, but I wanted to make a game, or I wanted to make a website, or I kind of doing this thing on the side, like that kind of interest in it really goes a long way. And well, on Witold's side, that's actually, he did come in kind of as a junior, but turns out that we had a lot of technology, especially on the AI front, that no one had a lot of time to kind of play with. So we were very nuts and bolts trying to get everything working. And a lot of what Witold's done is actually just playing around with it and, effectively running experiments on it, because it's such a new field, especially on the AI side of things. It's we're always taking guesses, and this is a known problem in the AI field. How is it coming up with that answer? And then if you change, the inputs you send it or the way you train it, how does that affect the kind of results that it gives you? And it's it's interesting because it's not always intuitive. So
yes.
Yeah, my thing is really problem solving. That's what really drives me, what I really enjoy. So looking into the nuts and bolts and maybe not always understanding why, but how. And what can we do with it, rather than focusing on this is really fancy algorithm, or this is really nice looking piece of code, but like, what can we do with it? Having the bit of hands-on approach is my forte.
And having an understanding of, this is a cool thing. Here's a potential path to commercialization.
Yeah,
very much.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things too, as a company, we score very well in the buzzword bingo. AI, LiDAR, drones, it's actually works kind of both ways for us in that, there are a lot of AI companies out there that we do everything for everyone and they have no kind of domain knowledge of any particular application.
Yep.
Whereas we're using AI to solve, effectively rail industry problems at the moment. And that kind of focus, whenever we talk to potential customers, they kind of have they breathe a sigh of relief. It's like,
being able to speak their language and talk about switches, loops, whatever, line codes, whatever it is, we actually know what we're talking about.
Yeah, because they're used to getting, generic AI companies of, hey, we can do A, B, C, X, Y, Z. Let us do it for you. And they're like, okay, do you know about, the rail corridor or these things that you're going to need to find, or why it's important that we find, and, you can't be everything to everyone. So there's a lot of AI companies that they can get things working in a Jupyter Notepad, say, and show, hey, I got really good results on that thing you gave me to get good results on.
Yeah.
But it's a whole different ballgame, deploying that at scale and crunching things through it. So
just winding back a bit, you mentioned that the people that you're most interested in are people with side projects, and they just have a genuine passion for the field. Does someone need a degree to come and work at Cordel?
I mean, it depends on the position. So, yeah, evidence exists. The answer is no in the room, but for the most part,
technically, I have a degree, just not in the relevant field.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point too, is like, you know, having a uni degree, a relevant one is obviously better because you get to have that theoretical background. But just even knowing someone has been through that process and stuck with it to the end, because it's, you know, no small feat doing that. And even if it is slightly irrelevant at the end of the day, you know, 5 or 10 years after university, you know, it's not a narrow path that people go down after university. So even if it's wandered quite a bit, it's not necessarily a deal breaker. And the other point is, you know, there's all types of jobs. So would I hire someone with no formal qualifications to work on the core of our LiDAR fusion algorithms? Nah, that's like you need to know, you know, enough theoretical background to work on that kind of thing. Then again, we also have a lot of, you know, UI based things and they're relatively straightforward, and you know they're it's almost like a lot of the what you see is what you get type jobs. So you can do a lot of front end things, and you know, you can tell very quickly if it's good or if it's causing problems. So for those kind of things, it becomes a lot less clear. And yeah, we have in the past, although I think aside from Witold, I think almost all of our developers have at least a degree. So
Sure. Witold has a degree.
Yes. Not relevant.
well, as I said too, you know, paths diverge. It's not a straight line thing. So so yeah, it's worked out well for us. But it's definitely useful. That said, if you know, someone came to me without a degree but said, hey, I've been spinning a LiDAR and I've been making point clouds and I've been, you know, figuring these things out from it or something like that, I'd be, well, that's very interesting to me, you know, come on in and have a look at what we're doing kind of thing. That would be very interesting to us. But yeah, I mean, just as important as the formal training is, you know, if you do your degree and then I don't want to touch a computer after that, then that's doesn't speak highly that you'll keep evolving with the time, because, you know,
I think this is very much a mark of everybody on our team, or maybe even a better indicator than a degree, that everybody's really into what we're doing. Everybody's passionate, if not particularly about software development and about some aspects of the tech, or like we really enjoy what we're doing at Cordel. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
I'd hope so. But it hasn't happened by mistake either. We try and make it, you know, we're working on some very tough problems. So it's hard sometimes to keep working on hard problems and not make it more stressful than it is. But I think we try and achieve that balance fairly well.
Is there anything that you would recommend external to just a traditional university degree to upskill, be it in, you know, traditional software development, ML, AI, whatever sort of buzzword you want to throw in? Basically, anything that makes someone a relevant prospect for Cordel. Any sort of self-paced learning, anything like that?
Yeah, it's a bit of a tough question because, you know, these things all vary so widely between, you know, fairly self-taught things to, you know, more structured things. To be honest, I've never seen, you know, I haven't delved into it too much, but a lot of those things I wouldn't put a lot of weight on, just because, you know, you're following someone else's path kind of thing, and it's may or may not be interesting. For me, it's more interesting that someone's gone out by themselves and just kind of forged a road, even if it's completely wrong, or they got there in the end and like, I don't want to do that. So, and that happens quite a bit with technology. You kind of go, oh, it'll be cool to do this. And then you start down the path and it's either, oh, okay, I found there's like several big problems that you need to overcome but I think that it's more interesting to me if someone has, you know, kind of done some exploration, really, seeing what they can do with it and go from there.
Yeah, the risk of sounding cliche is like follow what interests you or do what interests you and dig deeper. It's much more, or you learn much more at the end than if you follow somebody else's videos or things like that, in my opinion and my experience at least.
Yeah, and in my experience, you want to do your own thing. You want to make a game, or you want to, make something pretty or a demo or something. You'll end up watching videos, and there's a whole internet of resources out there. So no one locks themselves in a room these days and disconnects. So that's definitely part of it. Is utilizing a lot of the resources out there and. Well, you might be following your own kind of path at something that interests you. Definitely, there's a whole internet of resources out there, and I haven't found any one to be better than the others. For everything.
Yeah.
Although Stack Overflow pretty much is your go-to.
Yeah. You're all doing a fair bit. I think that's the understatement of the century. How do you manage it from a time perspective, from just physically keeping track of tasks? I know Witold at his house has a Kanban board in his room, which is unreal.
Why do you say that? I find Agile is extremely useful in daily life.
I'm not discrediting it or being negative in any way. I think it's excellent.
Yeah, I find it personally, I find it more useful in my personal life than at work. I kind of tend to go with the flow more at work and jump into things that need done most at the moment and kind of deal with Jira backlog afterwards, so to speak. But in my personal life, I really appreciate using Kanban board and having tasks clearly delineated between me and my wife, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But work-wise, we use Jira and...
I'm sorry, just on the topic of using Agile at home, I have 2 small kids and I would love to see what they would do with the Post-it notes for a Kanban board. It would not be a Kanban board for very long, but maybe a work of art or something like that. But yeah, look, at work, we use, pretty much the Atlassian stack. So we're using Confluence to document a lot of things. And, that's great for Jira for a lot of task management, and Bitbucket for our source control, because they just tie in nicely to each other. And you can see why the Atlassian guys are billionaires. They do charge you the pound of flesh for the privilege. But and I can also see that they're almost overkill for so many things as well, because it's got a learning curve that's very steep. But once you get over that, that will do all your time tracking, so we can tag things with different projects and get an idea of, how much time we've been spending on each of those. So, and that's one thing that, has happened after the acquisition, is we have to have a lot more rigor around, we've probably tripled the development team in the last 18 months. So it's, some fairly spectacular growth, but a lot more than in terms of, managing people and making sure that we're directing our effort in the right direction, as opposed to actually doing work, which is a bit of a shock to the system. But slowly coming to terms with it. But we found that to be, a very good approach. We do fortnightly sprints with Jira. We do different sprints for, our core development team. The AI team will do their own sprint planning, and the hardware team effectively does their own sprint planning as well.
Cool.
Which has been interesting, kind of making, because as programmers, we always get the best tools, right? Because programmers write tools. So previous companies, we've even just written tools because we wanted them. But thankfully, we've avoided that this time around. But the hardware team has effectively made a lot of the processes work very well for them as well, despite being, off what you'd normally consider Jira and, the software tools to be used for. So,
any sort of podcast, books, anything like that you think are particularly good, particularly relevant?
Oh, well, apparently Newy Tech people have a pretty decent podcast that...
It exists.
It exists.
It's there.
It's very meta. We're
here.
I personally don't listen to a lot of podcasts, especially about the actual industry or bits and pieces. I feel like I get enough exposure to it during work hours. So whenever I'm listening to them, it's normally on a different topic, but I don't really have any specific recommendations for that kind of thing.
I'm the same. Outside of work, my time is spent mostly off screen. So like for me, Podcastle and Escape Pod would be the podcasts to go. Short fiction, science fiction.
Yeah. Is there anything you would tell a younger version of yourself, or any sort of advice you would give to maybe put yourself in a better position than you are now? Not saying that you're not in good positions.
Sounds very like self-development workshop vibe.
Yeah, it is funny because when you hear people like, "Oh, I do everything the same again," I just kind of want to yell at them. It's like, no, change things, like do it differently. So, yeah, there's a lot that I would do differently.
Sure.
In the early days when we were doing mobile phone stuff, that was very good to be run out of, Newcastle. We actually started in Gilliston Heights, so
Yeah.
more Maitland way than Newcastle, but we'll take it in. It's and that was actually quite good. But then as we started doing more, moving into trying to make some consumer products, like once we started doing the mapping and we kind of started doing some of the social networking side of things, you just can't do that kind of thing here from Australia. Like a lot of the consumer facing things, they need to be done at such a scale and you need so much investment, because it's such a winner takes all type thing. And obviously Facebook has mostly won that. But unless you're in Silicon Valley where you've got PCs throwing, wads of cash at people to just experiment with ideas, that kind of thing's best, not done here, and not just Newcastle, probably Australia.
Yeah, just Australia in general.
If you want to do that kind of thing. And then, so 135, the local search days, we actually got a pretty good product up. And, one of the key things that we didn't do was CEO at the time was a bit was worried about getting it out there. And he's like, what if it doesn't go right? Looking back, I would always err on the side of, get it out there, see what people think. You can always iterate on it later. And this is what a lot of tech companies are doing. So yeah, you don't want to get egg on your face, obviously. So you do your homework to make sure that but once something's ready, definitely get it out there in front of customers and get that feedback, as soon as you can. On the Cordel side of things, this is 6 years into our journey there. It was a very challenging thing to start here in Newcastle because it is fairly capital intensive. You have to buy LiDAR scanners, you need to buy drones. It was very hardware rich in the early days. So probably wouldn't recommend that. Although it's worked out quite well now that we're kind of reaching the scale where we're getting it out there.
You kind of crested the hill.
Yeah. And I think that, if you're, and for a lot of people, if you're going down the startup path, is just being mindful of what scale do you need to hit for it to be, fairly self-sustaining and workable, because there's a lot of things where that's very hard to do here in Newcastle or indeed in Australia. But this is also something that informed, our choice of going into rail as well, because, AI companies and LiDAR companies, there's a lot of buzz around those spaces, a lot of things happening, but tying it all together and, directing it at one vertical is something that no one else was really doing. So we kind of saw an opportunity there, and that helps you stand out from a crowd as well. So,
anything to add?
What was your original question?
Are you suggesting my answer was meandering enough?
Anything you would tell a younger version of yourself to maybe, advantage?
Yeah, I think I would agree with first part of what Aaron said. Get yourself out there, or don't be afraid of doing things, and fail quickly, fail better, learn from it.
I guess wrapping up, where do people find out more information about yourselves, about Cordel? Are you hiring anyone at the moment?
Yeah,
Any
good
sort
question.
of any sort of
So-
cool plugs that you can throw in?
Cordel.ai is our kind of main site. It talks about what we do. That's
And
probably
we're always looking for talented developers, regardless of whether we're hiring at the moment or not. That's important to say.
that does seem to be a pattern. Yes. Yeah. Look, the Cordel AI site is probably a good place to start to learn a bit more about what we do.
Yep.
The nextcore.co site is the drone-based LiDAR scanner, and it's got a bunch of use cases and bits and pieces. So I think there is also a Cordel YouTube channel with a few videos and bits and pieces that
Cool.
are quite short to see just some applications of the technology that we're doing.
For sure.
We have a presence on LinkedIn.
Yes, we're actually got a pretty good LinkedIn presence these days. So there's always interesting stuff there. Make sure you get on that and follow it. That's really kind of, out of all the social networking, LinkedIn's really where we post the most stuff because it's the most relevant for what we're doing. But yeah, we're definitely looking for developers at the moment. We're expanding it's still in kind of an exponential phase at the moment, so it's very wearing. But yeah, we're getting more people in there, and as we grow and get more data, and that's the key thing for us. The more hardware scanners we get out there, we're already drowning in data, but we hope to make the right floaties to swim in it. So
absolutely. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for both coming on. Really appreciate it.
excellent.
Thank you for having us.
Hey,
Yeah.
okay.
Thanks for having us on.